Oh, I'm a cat. I'm a sexy cat.
Hello, welcome back. It is week 173 on Out on That Line podcast. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, it is the weekend on a weekday. And how are you this week?
Friday on a Tuesday. You know exactly how I'm doing. These are hard times, Daddy, but hard times make hard men. I don't want viewers here to feel like their lives have been wasted. And I would say up to this point, their lives have totally probably been a waste, if I had to hazard a guess.
Well, it's whatever week they first started listening to us.
Is really when it kind of started again for them, where they really got their second chance. You know what I mean? Like you've got like degenerate gamblers and literal riverboat gamblers and drug addicts and psychopaths, and they're just like flicking through YouTube one day hoping like, does someone have an audiobook version of the Anarchist Cookbook? I feel like getting up to no good. And somehow the algorithm throws them out on that line, throws them this podcast. And what the smart ones, the ones that believe in life and believe in second chances, what they do is make sure that they're subscribed to this channel. They make sure that they turn the notification bell on so that they always know what's happening and what to do next and how to keep their life on the right track. Don't let it go off the rails again. You can't bite the mailman on the tit again. You can't do it. He was so pissed, and he's your uncle. That's so awkward at holidays. So, like, avoid that fate. Subscribe, notifications on, click the little bell, give the videos a thumbs up, give this video a thumbs up, and leave some comments in the margins, whatever you do, dear God. We want it to be like two AI talking to each other. All of a sudden, you psychos are speaking in a language we can't understand, and we don't know what you're up to, and we are not responsible. At youtube.com/c/out on that line. That's where you are right now. I guarantee it. So subscribe and stick around.
You snuck that one in on me.
I just scooted on in.
Yeah, that's always the best way to do it. I think everybody that's listening, they all hit the subscribe button if they haven't already.
Yeah, shit changed today. Good on you guys.
Yeah, that was well done. Well, what do you say, Alex? Did we hop right into, because I think there's going to be a whole lot to talk about here. We're going to talk about the Weeknd and the newest album, Hurry Up Tomorrow. So we're finally getting to this one. I think it came out like a month ago, month and a half, or something like that.
3 weeks, a month, yeah.
So it's been out for a little bit. The Weeknd, one of the biggest artists on the planet, not just in the US, but just on the planet in general. I think is always in the running for most listened to artist on Spotify, at least. Which I got to assume translates pretty well to other music platforms like YouTube and Apple Music and Tidal and wherever it is you get your stuff from. Probably same places you get this podcast, I would assume. Is where most people are listening to those sorts of things. So the Weeknd is a character, a long-running character by a man named Abel Tesfaye. So the Weeknd has always been known as this kind of fly by night, getting into the real kind of gutter aspects of society, talking constantly about addiction and partying and not willing to get rid of that addiction. Lots of love songs, lots of heartache. A lot of it felt like you were driving down, especially these last few albums that apparently this one is part of the, kind of wraps up the trilogy of these last 3 albums that no one knew was a trilogy until just now because he said so. You get this sense that you're in this city that's like almost kind of like falling apart, feeling like you're almost like disconnected from kind of a regular version of society because you kind of live and breathe through these cities and through these other moments that kind of sustain you bit by bit through the days. There's a lot of desperation you hear in these albums. There's a lot of defiance you hear in these albums of like, I'm gonna get through this, and then the next song says, no, I can't get through this. It's really, really interesting work overall. I think a huge departure from kind of how he was for the first few albums that he did as The Weeknd. Those had a lot more of the, I guess, like starker kind of R&B, less of the big glitzy glammy, kind of pop music that he was making around like Starboy and kind of that time, maybe some other songs a little bit before that, but back when he's doing like The Birds, and songs like that were really just these kind of epic, very stark R&B kind of songs.
Yeah, and it is interesting, like the stark divide from Starboy to getting into After Hours, into Dawn FM, into this album, Hurry Up Tomorrow, doing something really fun with pop and pop R&B. Up to that point, up to the point of like Starboy just doing really smooth pop R&B, and then taking this real conceptual turn and
Mm-hmm.
getting into synth. And like on this album there's Brazilian funk, there's
Mm-hmm.
house, there's Giorgio Moroder is like
Giorgio fucking Moroder is on this
Giorgio.
album, dude. Yeah.
But no, and I mean you have Justice, you have they're like a, I don't know how much you know about Justice, this French duo.
Mm-hmm.
um you have Metro Boomin, you have Lana Del Rey, you have Florence and the Machine and Travis
Mm-hmm.
Scott, all on this
Anita,
album.
the
Anita, yeah,
the
on
Anita
Sao
song,
Paulo.
the Anita song is a banger, Alex.
And that's the thing, is this is, to me, when we talk about Twigs and we talk about Charlie XCX, and it's like, what didn't quite lock in? Like, why can't I
Mm-hmm.
quite access those things? There's a lot of that DNA running through this album. There's a lot of club bangers, house music, electronic music, dance
Mm-hmm.
music, but also like infusing the funk, the pop, the synth, all of that kind of stuff. And like dipping a toe into the weird and experimental and conceptual in Don FM, and then like really seeing that through here at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the trilogy is part of what makes him so unique, and part of what like allows me to access a genre that I like wouldn't typically touch. It's like putting cheese on broccoli to get a little kid to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
You get me to take in that dance electronica structure by
Mm-hmm.
covering it in smooth grooves.
He even has. So we've talked about Giorgio Moroder. We talked about Anita. We talked about all these people that were all over this album. Metro Boomin. Another producer on this album that folks may have heard of, Max Martin, on the song Open Hearts. Tell me if you've heard of any of these artists before. Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, Christina Aguilera. Basically, every pop artist that you've ever heard of, Pink, everyone, Katy Perry, every single one. Max Martin is likely behind a couple of their hits. He has, I think, over 100 songs that have gone platinum that he's produced. And the thing is with him is, how like Timbaland has his very distinct style. Like you can always tell it's a Timbaland song. Swizz Beats has his very distinct like style when he makes a beat. People like the Chainsmokers have a very distinct style when they make a beat. Like Steve Aoki, you can tell it's a Steve Aoki song. Avicii was the same way. But Max Martin, he's a chameleon. Like it does not matter. There's no genre that he sticks to. It's just what is going to be the most infectious thing that you could possibly hear. And I'll bet you if we go back, because I mean I listened, this album was long. So this one got its 3 listens, but boy howdy. 4.5 hours worth of listening to this album. Thank God we had 2 weeks to do it. That kind of worked out pretty well.
Yeah, this album has like its namesake, has a little bit of coke bloat to it. It's
Yeah.
it's long, and because it's long, some of the slower and longer songs droop just a little bit, but
Mhm.
it's that classic case of, in the context of a great album and consistency, because the album moves seamlessly from track to track, so it's not quite as stark. You just
Mhm.
feel some little dips in the energy, or a little like dips in your attention span. But then it always business picks right back up. So like
Mhm.
some of the bloat, some of the songs suggest cuts you maybe could have made. But again, if it's going to be the last in a trilogy, and we should talk about like the last Weekend album,
Mhm.
reserve the right to, backtrack that and do more stuff as the Weekend. But he has talked seriously about retiring the Weekend persona and basically killing the Weekend off with this album.
Yeah, that to me is a wild situation
It's
because
wild.
one, like, I understand the idea of creating this character, like Chapel Roan, another good example. She may decide, I don't even, I'm not even positive, honestly, what her real name is. She may decide eventually that Chapel Roan as a character is done, and she wants to just either be herself or a new character or something like that. Um, the thing is with the Weekend, though, and probably the same issue that Chapel Roan would run into if she tried to do it. The problem with the Weekend is that everybody knows who, like, that it's Abel Tesfaye if you're like a music fan. But I would guarantee you, out of 10 people that know a Weekend song, 8 of them don't know that his name is Abel Tesfaye. They think he's just the Weekend. That's all they know him as because they hear songs on the radio, and he's just one of the most popular artists ever. So if you go all of a sudden and change your name, like, you can hope that places are going to pick it up and push it because you're the Weekend, but it's always going to have that hurdle to jump over and be like, oh, this is Abel Tesfaye, insert new name, character, or whatever here if he decides to do that, formerly the Weekend. Because you're always going to have to do that so people know who it is. There's going to be a certain subset of people that will know, that are Weekend fans, and then will follow to the next portion of his career. But there's a lot of people that are very casual Weekend fans. I would say probably most people, just like any artist of that size, most of them are casual fans. You have your set of very serious ones, but most are casual. And if all of a sudden the Weekend doesn't exist, some of those people will probably even think he died. Like, if there's just been no new music for a long time. I think there's an issue with when you become stratospherically big and you go to change your name like that. Like, I feel like he probably doesn't care. He's probably got so much money anyway that he just wants to focus on art. But I feel like you're going to automatically just, without question, going to lose a chunk of just kind of automatic fan base.
When you are as culturally ubiquitous as The Weekend, yeah, I do think it's probably easy for people to lose touch with you. Like, I don't keep up with the Kardashians. So I don't know what's coming and going there. Like, Travis Barker and the power forward have like 6 kids now. News to me. Um,
I
I
don't
just
even think he's married to that one.
okay, see, that's how up on this I am. But at any rate, you do kind of get that where like you almost kind of pass into legend. Whereas you compare it to Sturgill Simpson, Johnny Blue Skies.
Mhm.
Sturgill Simpson is so much more niche and has a much more dedicated, active fan base. Are there Weekend fans who like know the shit inside and out? Absolutely. Um, but you look at like per capita, the Sturgill fans that are so dialed in that Sturgill just has to say, by the way, done making albums as Sturgill, going to do it as Johnny Blue Skies. And everybody gets the memo for the most
Mhm.
part. Probably, yeah, more difficult to execute when you're a phenomenon like The Weekend and all of a sudden you're Abel Tesfaye, which doesn't mean Abel Tesfaye has nothing to say. It means he's said everything he wants to say as The
Mhm.
Weekend. And so
Yeah.
that for me begs the most interesting question, which is what is he going to do next? He's very into acting and producing. He had that wild show at HBO, The
Yeah.
Idol.
I didn't watch it. Did you?
I didn't, but I hear after like 4 episodes, the network was like, "We cannot, in good conscience, continue to air this. We must cancel this show
Yeah.
in the middle of the season."
Yeah.
So like, it hasn't been all roses, but he was in Uncut Gems playing a version of himself. He was very good. He was very charismatic. Coincidentally,
Mhm.
so was Kevin Garnett in that film. But I think, does he pivot to acting? Does he pivot to filmmaking? There's a movie, Hurry Up Tomorrow, that was created and is in the can coming out in May. That's like
Ooh.
a kind of a tie-in to this, where he's playing a fictionalized version of himself who starts to go insane. Um, so is he gonna pivot full time to the cinema? Or is he gonna keep making music, but do it in a completely unconventional way, like when the Beatles decided they weren't gonna play concerts anymore, or Steely
Hmm.
Dan stopped touring, and just like got in the studio and just tinkered and put stuff out?
Hmm.
Because the grind of he talks about it in this album, the grind of shows, the grind of performing freaking
Hmm.
8 times a week or whatever, the drugs, the lifestyle, the mental stress of it all takes a toll. You can't do it forever. He's 34 and he feels like he's turning into mush.
Hmm.
So at that point, unless you're addicted to fame, which I don't know that he is, but don't think that he is.
I think he likes being famous, but I don't. It's he's gonna do it how he wants to.
Yeah, well, and he's achieved it
Yeah.
now. So, like, yeah, people will come along. You don't necessarily have to perform. You did one of the best halftime shows
Yeah.
ever. Your
Yeah.
concerts are fucking awesome. So maybe now you pivot to being a producer, or you just go full Frank Zappa and you put a studio in your house and start coming up with crazy shit. You're Prince.
Hmm.
You love Prince. You open up your own Paisley Park and it's
Yeah.
wall to wall shag carpeting and mirrors.
That'd be sick. Yeah. I think there's something to be said for, an artist's passion falling more in the creation versus the performance. I think there's a lot of artists that love the performance. They probably, obviously you can have both. There's probably artists that love to create the stuff and then love to go out and perform it in front of people, but there's probably a lot of artists that just really love the creative part of it, putting it together and making it in the first place. And they'll want to show it and share it with people, obviously, but I think when you force yourself to have the obligation of 40 tour dates in the United States and then 45 more around the world, taking up a whole year of your life, promoting this album that you've already created, I think for somebody like him that's always trying to be on to the next thing, doing something like a tour in support of an album probably feels like kind of revisiting old news. And I think that probably is part of it. And I think that's also, you hear about bands all the time that like hate playing their big hit because they want to be known for more than that. And I think that's his one of his fears is that he never wants to be stuck. And if he's got to do an entire year of this world tour performing these same songs over and over, and obviously he could change up the set list and all that kind of stuff, like Springsteen does that kind of thing all the time. Pearl Jam would do that kind of thing all the time. Like, it's not unheard of that you don't play the same set night after night after night. You can do what you want, make it interesting for yourself. But I think overall, it's just the kind of forced obligation that it's like, okay, I got to be in Houston tonight, and then it's Dallas tomorrow, and then it's over to Phoenix, and then it's San Diego and LA, and then it's up to Portland and Washington. It's just, I think it can definitely weigh on you, especially when you live a lifestyle like he's been known to live. Um, you just burn the candle at both ends for that long, and I think he's very good about presenting that through the music and that being how he's feeling, and also kind of wanting to hold on to that. Like, he's like, there's a reason I was doing it is because I liked it. He's like, I just can't, it's wearing me out, it's wearing me down, and I have to change something. Now, to get to what he does next, and if I can keep going long-winded here, I think if he's going to continue to just create music, I don't know that you can just pick another character name, at least not right off. I think if you're going to do anything, it's Abel Tesfaye, or just call yourself Abel or something like that. Just something where it's like, okay, you had this other identity. Here's like the real identity or whatever. And I think that's what you'd have to do if you create music. Now, if he decides he wants to go off and do like production of movies or TV shows, or, kind of spin that off in some other way, I think you could come up with the name of a production company or whatever it is. I think it doesn't matter what you say there. He'll probably just be known as Abel Tesfaye at that point. But I think I would love for him to keep creating music. I don't want another Rihanna situation where we get anti and then nothing else after that. So you're left hanging. So I would hope that he continues to create music, because I think obviously through this album, there's a lot left in the tank still.
Yeah, and he says so himself, and I agree that I wouldn't rush into another persona again to make the Sturgill Simpson, Johnny Blue Skies thing. Sturgill was not a persona, but you know, he liked to fuck around with his sound and then concepts, and then there's kind of this conceptual leap in like, well, now I'm a different guy, and
Hmm.
now I'm kind of like rocking out and jamming out and doing Grateful Dead stuff, and um, I mean, the show that we went to, he was doing like 45-minute freestyle jams. It was awesome.
Hmm.
He's in his Jerry Garcia era. We've talked about it. I don't think The Weeknd knows what's next. I have a quote here, and there's two versions of it. One of them was they're saying the same thing. The longer one was in service of promoting the album, so it's
Hmm.
pretty up its own ass, if I do say. I can read passages of it, but
He's been known for that. Yeah.
he's got a tendency. So the simplified version is, in terms of performing as The Weeknd, he's talking about, it's a headspace I've got to get into that I just don't have any more desire for. You have a persona, and then you have the competition of it all. It becomes this rat race, more accolades, more success, more shows, more albums, more awards, more number ones. It never ends until you end it. Everything needs to feel like a challenge. And for me right now, The Weeknd, whatever it is, it's been mastered. No one's going to do The Weeknd better than me, and I'm not going to do it better than what it is right now. I think I've overcome every challenge as this persona, but I just want to know what comes after. I want to know what tomorrow looks like. So hurry up tomorrow.
Hmm.
And there we have a title. Oh, oh, they
Yeah.
said it. They said it.
See, I think that's such a great quote.
Yes. And then you get the other version of it. Yesterday was 14 years ago. We held our breath, falling into a shimmering sea in the after hours of the night, attempted to cleanse the wounds with melodies and lights, a bulletproof bandage to shield what lies beneath. In a place where the seasons never change, where time ceased to spin. But therein lies the problem. Today has felt like an endless spin. I keep distorting the truth, immune to the dizziness, numb to the nausea. What lies beneath screams in silence. I look in the mirror and feel both old and new, stuck in limbo and unable to move. I still haven't faced myself. More songs could help, but what do I have left to say? Woe is me in my gilded cage. The very thing that once made me invincible failed me on the world stage. A new trauma surfaced, opening floodgates. But a new path awaits. When today ends, I'll discover who I am. Hurry up tomorrow.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna put a quote out there, I think the first one's what you want to do for
You know,
sure.
the economy of language, as Hemingway would say.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so to me, the first one is like when you go to somebody that's a professional speaker, maybe not even a professional speaker, just somebody that's a good orator. I think that's what that is. The second one is like the homeless guy you're stepping over on the corner. That's like what he's yelling at you as you walk by him.
Well, and it's like, as clever and as talented as we know him to be,
Mhm.
take about like 10% off here, because
Yeah.
it's all these little, it reads like a prophecy, you know what I mean? Like it's making all these things like falling into a shimmering sea in the after hours.
Mhm.
Um just leaving all these little a bulletproof bandage to shield what lies beneath. The fact that he would always walk around in like the bloody bandages and be like,
Yeah.
it's a bit, it's a bit, it's a fake facelift, it's a bit. I'm hiding myself.
Mhm.
Um, and it all works. And like I look in the mirror, like obviously blowing rails off of a plate.
Mhm.
Um, the gilded cage, and then the one line that I really do love, the very thing that once made me invincible failed me on the world stage, and that was the concert in 2022 that he had to cancel because he fucked his voice all up. He blew his
Mhm.
voice out, and that created this like intense paranoia and like legitimate trauma in him that informs this entire
Mhm.
album. It's the basis for this entire album. It's referenced multiple times. It's alluded to like in this statement. It's also like there's literally a part where he goes, "I can't use my fucking voice."
Mhm.
Um, it stuck with him, and it was like the impetus for, I think, the essence of the quotation, which was, "I've lost my voice," not "I'm creatively bereft" or
Mhm.
"I've run out of things to say." I've said everything I can in The Weeknd's voice as The Weeknd. I've lost my voice. This is a signal that
Mhm.
it's time to do something different. And Again, what would I love to see if we're wish listing? Studio musicianship. Get some studio musicians in there and have them just like make your shit with you, invite a bunch of other people in, produce
Mhm.
stuff, go full Steely Dan. I want to see the weekend go Steely Dan.
Don't no, you don't need to. We don't need to do that. Okay. Let's find our new traveling Wilburys. Let's have
More
the
like the traveling
weekend.
dingleberries, am I right?
Let's have the weekend like kind of start up the new traveling Wilburys. Maybe he hops in there with Silk Sonic. I don't know if they're all cool with each other, but that'd be neat.
See, there's a lot of like Silk Sonic on this album, among
Mm-hmm.
other things. It's pretty wild how varied things are on here. So you can hear all the things he's interested in experimenting with. And that's exciting because at any point he could be like, I'm going to produce a
Mm-hmm.
Brazilian funk album. I'm going to overdose on synth. I'm going to supplant Giorgio Moroder and I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to do some wild shit. Or I'm going to bring Moroder in and we're going to make Random Access Memories look like a truck stop dump.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
exciting. It's legitimately exciting to see like he could go in a lot of directions.
You have because you have very differing like kind of songs on here. So you mentioned Justice. The song that they do is the one that opens up the album. That gave me such like Michael Jackson vibes when it
Oh
really
yeah.
like kicks in and he starts singing. I thought it was like a Michael Jackson song,
You would think
but
it
I
was
think
Thriller.
you would think it was, and I think it was very much like a nod to that. I think he's always very good about acknowledging like where he gets his ideas from. I think he's a very original thinker, but I think I don't think he's afraid to be inspired by something. And I think that's where you get like a really good artist is somebody that's confident in what they're doing, but they're confident enough in what they're doing that they can acknowledge something else someone else is doing is good. And I think he's good at like kind of incorporating that stuff because so we talked about Justice, and then a couple songs later, Sao Paulo with Anita is just like a banger, just like a kind of um almost has like an Afro beat to it, just like a really, really good song, really, really fun song. Until we're Skin and Bones, 180 from there. I mean, you have acoustic on here. You have Open Hearts, which is like has that EDM kind of style, that almost like Swedish House Mafia. That's the Max Martin song.
Big time.
Big time, yeah. Um, let's see, Reflections Laughing by The Weeknd. It's like that's when you get into all of a sudden it's a rap album. When you get Travis Scott on there. So it's like there are so many points here um and there's a ton more songs after that. But even in just the first 10 songs, you get such a varied look at and really honestly all of the different eras of his career. And I think that's what's most important here is I think when you look at this album, it's not just a Weeknd album, it's the last true Weeknd album. Because anything after this is going to be like everything Jay-Z came out with after the Black Album. Is like, oh, we knew you didn't mean it when you said you were retiring. You know what I mean? So it's like, or when Michael Jordan came back with the Wizards, it's like we knew you didn't mean it. It's not going to mean as much. You know what I mean? But it's when you look at that, I've loved the Weeknd forever since the 14 years ago. So like that his second album especially, that Birds Part 1 and 2 suite, one of the greatest like R&B kind of suites you can listen to. I don't know if you ever sat down and listened to that one, but it's absolutely fantastic. But there's a lot of that sort of style, kind of that a little bit more sparse, a little bit more emotional, a little bit more haunting kind of style of The Weeknd. And then you had plenty of the kind of newer version of The Weeknd, which is that driving beat, club banger, driving way too fast down a city street, up way later than you should be, that kind of feel to it. I think you've moved along in his career. And I think what he's shown is that it doesn't matter the genre. When you have a voice like he has, it fits so many things. It's like Bruno Mars. I don't know, and I think they're a great comparison because one listener count, like Bruno Mars is also one of the most listened to people on the planet. I think they both are known for having very like acrobatic voices. They can sing a lot of different ways. They are performers. Like they put a lot into the show. Now I think Bruno Mars might love, kind of going back to what I referenced earlier, might kind of love and be driven by the performance side of things. as much or maybe more than the creative side of things, whereas I think the Weeknd skews more towards the creative side of things. But it's like they both put that same kind of care into it. And I think when he says I've accomplished all the goals, like when you're equal or better, listener wise to the other biggest artists on the planet, like Taylor Swift is supposed to be the biggest artist on the planet, right? No, it's The Weeknd. On Spotify, he is the one with the most listeners. It's wild that he is that big, and there's other artists that get talked about more, but I can see what he's saying. He's like, what more is there to prove? And I think this album's like, I'm going to give you every little bit of what you know The Weeknd as, and then that is it.
And it's all like moment to moment so different. It is. It's getting all your shit in before the end. And obviously he himself has said he reserves the right to come back as The Weeknd at any point. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily a done deal, but it's being treated as the final album. And I'm taking it as that. I'm taking it as the last Weeknd album in the conventional sense. We'll
Mhm.
see. It may not even be as cut and dried as like I'll never make anything under the name The Weeknd, and I'm just gonna start making the same music under my name. Like again, whether he becomes a producer or he goes into movies or what,
Mhm.
it remains to be seen. He says he's still going to be doing music, but this does kind of feel like a last looks. Get all the shit you want to get in. Make sure you've said everything you want to say, um, because it goes from like it's got like a cinematic scope to it. It's
Mhm.
fucking huge album, not
Yeah.
just in length, but in like the size and the dimension of it. So you get all of your like gothic operatic synth in there. You get your ballads, you get your acoustic, you get your funk, you get your pop, you get your rap, your R&B. You're literally playing the hits. And like
Mhm.
you have something like going from Sao Paulo to a couple songs later, Baptized in Fear, which is like a synth ballad about like almost drowning in your tub. It
Mhm.
sounds like there's like a literal demon, like a sleep paralysis demon or something that's like lurking while he's just like paralyzed in the tub. And it's like, did he overdose in the tub? Whatever. It doesn't like, it's not as much of a concrete story as it is a feeling. And you feel that panic because he does kind of the Billy Strings thing where Billy Strings did that song where he was using like bong hits and lighter flicks as music. Weekend's doing that kind of stuff too. There's like water dripping, there's like moaning and choking and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, just like painting a full picture conceptually as a whole, and then from song to song. But it's not this like hat on a hat, overcomplicated, like concept album going out on a hard concept. I think
Mhm.
the idea of the trilogy from After Hours to Dawn FM to Hurry Up Tomorrow, I think that in and of itself is the concept. It's moving through this lifetime, this experience. And then one of the most interesting things about it right at the end is on the very, very last song,
Mhm.
Hurry Up Tomorrow, which is like this Purple Rain-esque kind of triumphant end.
Mhm. Great
The
song.
very last thing you hear is High for This, which is the first song that he ever released off of the original trilogy, like called the
Mhm.
trilogy, the first stuff he was putting out, those mixtapes. The first thing he released, High for This, is the last thing you hear on this album. The loop closes, the cycle starts again. Time is
Mhm.
a flat circle. So it's an interesting way to end the weekend by implying that the cycle begins anew.
Mhm.
It's like, and that's like the cool little shit that makes it different from, again, I'm not taking anything away from Charlie XCX or Twig's talent, but that's what makes the difference for me is like that level of thought
Mhm.
and concept to it. Just really sends it over the top. And that's the shit that the weekend is so good at.
Yeah. And I think for me, this album is whatever else he decides to do the rest of his career, if he comes back to The Weekend or if he doesn't, this album to me is such a good stamp on this run of albums as The Weekend, because it's like it's not, with Sturgill, I certainly wish we got, hopefully we get a million more Sturgill albums, but there was what, six that he came out with under his name.
Yeah,
I guess
something
there
like
were
that.
five that were like true, albums. Then you have like Ballad, Dude, and Juanita, and like Cutting Grass that I think he doesn't really count as part of his like overall like main discography, I guess. But I think with The Weeknd, he's come out with, I'm gonna count right now, but starting 14 years ago. So he started out with in 2011, House of Balloons, then Thursday, and Echoes of Silence, all three in the same year. And then Trilogy in 2012. Is that just all of them? Yeah, that's all of them all
Yeah.
together. Okay, so he released them all separately and then all of them together. And then he did Kissland, and then Beauty Behind the Madness. I think this was the one where he really popped. Was the Beauty Behind the Madness album? I think The Hills was the one that really like Can't Feel My Face was on this one. So like this is the one where he like blew up totally. And then Starboy, My Dear Melancholy, the After Hours album, Dawn FM, and then Hurry Up Tomorrow. And I think when you look at all of those albums, so there's what's that, 8 of them, truly. So I would you say that the first set that those are 3 separate ones?
I mean, I've only ever really seen it referred to as the trilogy. So
Yeah,
it's the Kill Bill problem. Is
we're
it
gonna
one
say
movie or is
it's
it
well,
two?
we're gonna say it's 3 because it's like they're all 45 minutes, 50 minutes long. So we're gonna say that's 3 albums. That's 3 albums worth of work that he put out there. So 3 there, 4 Kissland, 5 Beauty Behind the Madness, 6 Starboy, 7 My Dear Melancholy, 8 After Hours, 9 Dawn FM, 10 Hurry Up Tomorrow. And he's had a couple like live albums come out here and there, but just like truly like back to front written albums, 10 under The Weeknd. I think he's done enough.
Haven't you that'll do, Pig.
Yeah.
Haven't you done enough?
Yeah.
Um and the truth is, I think you could continue as the Weekend. He could continue as the Weekend. He could rest on his laurels, and that would just mean continuing to crank out consistent hits.
Mhm.
But obviously, there's a different mode, and it's kind of like in that quotation where he lays out, you know, you kind of you don't have to be addicted to the limelight, but addicted to the challenge,
Mhm.
your personal best. How many number ones can you have? Um, and at that point, like you have to argue, like, well, how much ego and narcissism is wrapped up
Mhm.
in that idea? But it's like, I think you have to have a certain level of ego and narcissism to keep going in an industry that chews you up and spits you out. So it's like,
And I think also and I think his motivation is that is that he wants to create something good enough to be number one. It's not that it's like the number one is the thing that matters the most to him. It's that he created something good enough to be that.
I think he thinks he has number one in him. Like he knows he has number one. So it's not about, oh, I'd better make something that will go number one. It's, oh, I have this in the chamber and I know it's number one.
Mhm.
Why wouldn't it be? It's like Michael Jordan talking about, like, I never thought about missing a shot before I even took the shot. What's the point?
Mhm.
So I think that's kind of the mindset, and that has allowed the Weekend to experiment and produce these insane hits that take over the world and become like the most streamed artist. Good to see a Canadian in the rap game get a W for once.
Yeah,
Good to see it.
it's been a little bit.
Shout out to the
It has
51st
been
state. Good for
it.
them.
Yeah, it's been a little bit. But I'm overall. I don't know. Is there anything else that you feel like you need to say about this album? I feel like, I mean, we could go on another hour about it if we wanted to.
No, and I mean, like, yeah, we could like
Yeah.
really get into the weeds with like all the things that were done sonically. But again, I think the concept of the album, the concept of the Weekend and killing the Weekend, the concept of the 3 album cycle, all of that, I think is what, as interesting as this album is in isolation, as good as it is, that's the most interesting stuff.
Mhm.
So unless we wanted to get into the weeds about every single technical and musical aspect,
Yeah.
I think we touched on the highlights. So
Yeah.
I will go ahead and give this a hearty buy it.
Yeah. And I will say, I think there's only, I don't even know. I'd have to go back and really listen to them, but I don't know if there's any Weekend albums that I would not have considered to buy it. Like if we were to have
Yeah,
gone back and reviewed all of them, I think all 3 of the ones we've done on the show, including this one now, have all been buy it.
I think before we were doing the buy it, stream it, skip it, recuse yourself,
Mhm.
options. I think it was just I think it was just skip it or stream it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we gave the first two stream it for sure. This is a buy it. Let's retro give the whole trilogy a buy it. If you
Yeah.
haven't already, what are you waiting for?
Yeah. Hopefully will be. Oh man, can you imagine the vinyl box set that he would come up with for all three of these together?
Well, because there's already like 4 variants of the vinyl and like different
Yeah.
album covers and stuff. That again, I like the soup to nuts all around creativity in the way that things are teased and released and announced, the artwork, the video tie-ins, the movie tie-in, the album, the concept that like we're saying goodbye to the week. There's thought into every single aspect of it. It's a
Hmm.
complete experience. How could you not?
Yeah.
Even if the music sucked, how could you not like it? If Duran did that, I would have to give them credit, you know?
Yeah. There's well, Duran had some good hits. We can't throw him totally under the bus.
Yeah, they had 2/3 of a hit in several songs.
Yeah, but they had some choice failures
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. But yeah, the weekend, I can't wait to see what it is that he does decide to do next. Because when you have this level of creativity, um, it's got to come out somewhere. Like that's not going away anytime soon. It's just same thing. Someone like Sturgill, they just got the bug. It's they got to put something out there. They got to put something together. And I think if he continues, like hopefully it's music, so we can talk about it on our show. If it's not music, we find another medium to be able to talk about it, because I think whatever it is, it's going to be very interesting. And I definitely very much look forward to it. So, folks, make sure you go back and listen to the reviews of the other two Weeknd albums. Make sure you go back and listen to those other Weeknd albums. I would suggest, if you have the time, just start at the start. Start at the beginning, rip through all 10 of those albums, just put them on, make a playlist, and just let it run while you're driving. And I don't think you're going to be disappointed even the tiniest bit. And was there anything else this week, Alex, that you had in mind?
I absolutely not. I co-sign that sentiment. What are you guys waiting for? Watch every single video on our channel and listen to every Weekend album. It's not
Mhm.
hard. You've got the time.
Absolutely. Well, folks, we'll see you next time.